Hi, I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. Today we're going to test the speed of 4 different arrows. So the reason I'm doing this is because 90 meters, my sight's as far down as it can go. I shoot 51 pounds out of a recurve at 29 inches. Okay, so my sight's down as far and I have trouble seeing because my nose was in the way, because basically I'm trying to aim through my nose instead of aiming up here. So I thought if I can speed up the arrow, then instead of aiming down here, I might be able to aim up here. Okay. Now, saying that, I've changed my anchor point, and we're going to do a video about that. But let's just see what let's see what the speed of these arrows are out of the recurve. Just that 4 different types of arrows. Okay, so this is a CA-320. This is like an X10. Okay, so X10s are fairly heavy. They're an aluminium core with carbon wrapped around it, barreled in the middle. This is the same weight as an X10. Now, just on this, I was selling a whole heap of these into America, and because they're about a third of the price of an X10. Trump at the moment has a 100% tariff on China, I think it is. So when I ship stuff to America, people are complaining. So before you ship stuff, before you ask for stuff from Australia, check what the taxes are, Google it, because stuff from China is going to be expensive. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's going to be as expensive as American made, but it certainly really threw the price up. So these are CA-320s. They are 500 spine with tungsten points. Not that it matters. They're 120 grain. So these are softer than the current arrows I'm using. Sorry, softer than the current arrows I'm using. I'm currently using 450s. The weight of this is 350 grains. These are Icepoints. These are solid carbon arrow. When I say solid carbon, there's no alloy in them. They're just carbon. They're a 3.2, so the same thickness as an X10. This is 450 spine with a 120 grain point up front. These weigh 340 grain. This is a complete carbon arrow. This is a Mckinney. This is a 400 spine arrow. These are very light. So I was hoping to pick up more speed. Now these come through stiff through my bow. So at 18 meters, the bare shaft hits about that far away, 60 centimeters away from the fletched arrows to the left. So it indicates that it's stiff. This is with 100 grain, and these arrows are normally significantly lighter than a normal arrow. So this weighs 310, but I would need maybe 500 spine with these. And these are Victory 3D HVs. These are 600 spine. And you're going to say it's crazy, and yes, I agree, but I'm going to try it. These have an 80 grain point. So these weigh 256 grains. So let's see what happens. So the first arrow we're going to shoot is the CA-320. So what would I consider significant? I don't know. Now on this, let's discuss things. So the theory was behind an X10. So ACEs used to be lighter, and the theory was behind X10s were they are just making sure my stabilizer doesn't hit the chronograph. I'll just move this back a bit. That they were too light and they were getting too much wind drift if it was windy, so they went for an X10, which was heavier. Now, my personal theory is that you want all the weight in the point, and that makes the arrow more forgiving, so you want a heavy front of center. So you'd be better to go like with an ACE with like a 150 grain point than an X10 with a 120 or a 100 grain point. So that's just my theory that I'm running with at the moment, and we're going to test that into the future, but I haven't tested it yet. But that's what I've come up with for so far, that it's more forgiving to have a heavier point and less weight at the arrow. So many reasons for that, but let's test this. So this is 350, it's a 500 spine arrow. And I shot that how I normally do, 196 feet per second. So that's my normal anchor point. The next arrow we're going to shoot is the Icepoint. This is a 400 spine with a 120 grain point. Just do my new anchor. which is on the side of my face. Not that it affects anything, but because the draw length is the same. .202 feet per second, so we gained 6 feet with 10 grains. Right, the next one is your McKinney. So this is 310, so 30 grains lighter. This has got a 100 grain point. But this comes through as if it's too stiff. Okay, so when you shoot this against the arrows will hit slightly left on the target, only fractionally, but the bare shaft is way left. Now, does it affect my accuracy? Not really. They shot in the same sort of spot. It's just I like the fact that the arrow's tuned. Because I shot scores with these and it was the same. As it always is, it's always the same. It comes back to the archer. So .211 3D HV 256 grains. This has got an 80 grain point. Now out of compound, these come through 20 feet per second faster. Now I guess this is going to be weak, but I don't know. It might not be. Why do I think it's going to come through weak? Because it's 600 spine. But the reason I think it may not is because it's got an 80 grain point versus a 100 grain point. And the reason, I've done testing before on point weights, and I haven't found it made much difference. The reason for that, I guessed, was that as you put a bigger point weight in, the shaft, the inside was pushing itself up the shaft, and hence the arrow's becoming stiffer. But then I did some testing on a very lightweight spined arrow out of a lady's bow in the shop. I'm going to say I had no point weight, and that thing tuned, and I was like, and then I tested an arrow which is very, very much stiffer with a normal point weight, like 100 grains, and that tuned. And one was a 1600 and one was I think like a 900. So I'm like, so a 1600 and a 900 spine the same because the 1600 had no point weight, well, very light point on it. But I'm going to say the 1600 would really struggle shooting because there was just basically no point weight. So this 80 grain point, now I would normally go, look, you want higher point weights, and the arrow manufacturers told me go for heavier point weight because it makes the arrows more forgiving. But what I'm struggling with here is 90 meters. Okay, so I'm struggling to shoot the distance. So I'm thinking about light arrows. I'm thinking that world champions before my time used to shoot amazing scores, much higher scores than I shoot today. And I'm going to say much higher scores than maybe anyone in Australia shoots. And this is with old aluminium arrows and old bows and old strings and old stuff, right? It'll be interesting to see. I should actually check that. But they used to shoot men's feeders of 1300 and I think they were maybe 1200. Oh, I'd have to check. But they were quite big scores and they were quite competitive. I mean, what's happened is there were very few elite archers who shot these huge scores and everyone else was way down. Now everyone has been elevated by the equipment. The elite archers are still elite, but the average archer has just moved up so much more. The average archer, like myself, is so much better because the equipment's so much better than it used to be. Okay, so 256 grains. .228 feet per second. Okay, so that was very interesting. I'll just show you the arrows in the target. Let's move up here. There's the arrows in the target here. You can see they're all together. Certainly not what I expected. And I didn't expect that. I expected the 3D HV to be way out to the right. And yes, I'm close distance, but I expected it to be out to the right. And I wasn't aiming in the gold, I was aiming in the blue here. So I was aiming there. I had my sight set on 18 meters, but so why does it shoot low? Because because I'm closer. So when you shoot closer than I think it's 6 meters, 8 meters, your sight has to move down. Okay, so that's why my arrow is actually lower than when I shoot, if that makes sense. So I need my sight at maybe 25 meters. So I was shooting like 3 meters with an 18 meter sight setting. It need to be on a like 25 meter sight setting. Anyway, so basically all the arrows grouped, which is interesting. I was expecting the 3D HV to be on that side. I was expecting the McKinney to be on this side, and the McKinney is on this side a little bit, and the McKinney is kicked out a little bit, but except the McKinney shot okay, but the 3D HV came back dead straight. That's very interesting. I'm going to say it's very hard choosing the correct spine. I mean, you can ask someone, you can look up charts, but until you shoot, then it's very hard to pick which one. Like for me, they're like 4 different spine arrows. The 400s are too stiff, the 500s are too soft. And like I said, you can adjust that with arrow point weight sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't do anything. So just bear that in mind. But obviously dropping the point weight at a certain point does mean you can shoot a stiffer arrow like that 600, which is, and the bow wasn't terribly noisy. I just want to do this again because this is crazy how like 600 spine, these things are amazing. 3D HVs, I'm not doing a sales job for 3D HVs. Elite have now got a new arrow out called a HLR. Very popular with hunters. Hunters always used to want a heavy arrow, right? So they always wanted a heavy arrow shaft, but now they're going for light arrows. It's crazy, and they're weighting up the point, which is basically what I'm suggesting, that it's more forgiving to shoot, because all the point weight's at the front here. When the arrow comes out, it doesn't matter what the back's doing. The front's shooting straight, so this back is just straightening up. It's getting pulled by the front. That's why you want a heavy point weight, and basically no weight in the arrow. But these arrows are very popular with barebow shooters. So the reason they're popular for barebow shooters, well, one reason they're popular is their speed. They are so much faster. 228. Super fast. And it didn't appear to be very noisy. I'll just shoot another arrow, just so you can see. Because I was thinking I'm going to go out in the range with this, because I'm thinking about eucalyms, right? We're going to do a video with eucalyms, see how fast they are. And I'm going to guess that's going to change my spine again. So because they're so much faster, about 20 feet per second faster than a standard limb like the Fivics. The issue is you get nothing for nothing, and the poundage will build up at the start more, and when I say it's less here, there's more poundage weight here at the start, so you don't get anything for nothing. Like speed just doesn't happen out of nowhere, you've actually got to pull it back, so it's got to build up quicker at the start. Doesn't sound too bad. That's a 600, because I was thinking of 3D HVs. I was thinking 3D HVs and a 500 spine, and I was toying up 100 grain versus 80 grain. So that would suggest to me 228. If I went for 500 spine, it'd be around 220 feet per second. And then if I went to 100 grain, I'm guessing it's going to go back to around 215 feet per second, which is still like it's 10% faster. Okay, the last point I'm going to make also, I think as your arrow is shot, as it's flying down range, it starts off with this speed of 228, 200 feet per second. But as it approaches the target, the speed's actually decreasing. Okay. Now, one of the things I've seen, whether it's true or not, that's another question. One of the things I've seen is if the arrow is heavier, it loses less speed. So if the arrow is lighter, it will lose more speed. So it might get to the other end and actually might end up the same speed as the heavier arrow, right? But because it's been faster to start with, it will still be higher in the target. So that's my understanding, that the heavier arrows actually lose less as a percentage of flight downstream. So don't think, well, I'm going to pick up, a full 10%. You might pick up 8%, but still faster, and it's still making me feel better about 90 meters. Okay. So leave it there. So who wants faster arrows? Okay, so who wants faster arrows? If you're struggling to making the distance, then you want faster arrows. Okay, so what I used to do with my kids, and when I say my kids, the kids I used to coach, is I would plot their scores at different distances on a rating. Okay, so it tells you how well they're shooting. If their scores start dropping off at the longer distances, it means that's because your scores will drop off at longer distances, right? Because grips open up. But if they drop off considerably, it means the arrows are struggling to shoot the distance, right? I had one kid who was Australian champion, became adult champion, but he would literally kick ass over the short distances, but then at long distances he'd get whacked. This is when he was small, right? So the long distances he would struggle, but then he would win all the shorter distances, right? Until he became grown, because then his draw length is grown, his strength is grown, and then he can win at all the distances, right? So I think he won all of the junior nationals, except for his first one. So the point being that if you're struggling to hit distances, that's when the lighter arrows come in. But if you're not struggling hitting the distances, some people, if it's a windy condition, then you're better with a heavier arrow or a heavier point weight, because you get less wind drift on the target. But if there's no wind, like today's perfect, makes no difference. Like lightweight arrows, you should be able to shoot fine. Okay, so but just on that point, that heavier point weight should be more forgiving. So when you do a bad shot, doesn't mean you can shoot in a 3, on the edge of the target and it go in the middle. It's not what it means. It means when you do something slightly wrong, it's more forgiving. So it's more likely the arrow will straighten up quicker with a heavier point weight. So you still got to make good shots. It's not like you can be a rubbish archer and put a heavy point weight on and go, problem solved. But for hunters they generally want heavier point weights because it means more penetration. Okay, so the arrow is going to be quieter, so the animal's going to be less likely to jump the string, and more penetration. So instead of going through 2 animals, we'll go through 3 animals. Because I think some people think, oh, penetration's going to... No, it's going to go straight through. It's going to go straight through, and yeah. Anyway, so I'll leave it there. That was the first thing. Now we're going... My next thing is I want to try is Yucca limbs, and I want to compare Yuccas to Fivix limbs. I love Fivix limbs, and I'm not saying that because I've got a Fivix top on. I love them because this bow is fully strung. It's been always fully strung, and I've had these limbs on my bow for years. I'm going to say years. No problems, and I've had no warranty claims, I'm going to say, on especially the top of the line Fivix limbs, and even the cheaper limbs. I think I've only had 2. I feel like I've had 2 twisted, and that's out of the box, not like the limbs developed a twist. Straight, the person got the limbs and they had a slight twist in them, out of the box. But the rest have all been, and I sell hundreds of Fivix limbs, so I'm not saying that they're just amazing to me, because when I say I'm used to warranties on recurves, before back in time, it used to be 50% warranty rates. And now I sell hundreds of recurve limbs, and I can go, well, I think I've replaced 2, and they've been of the cheaper Xenia line, and that's over a number of years. So the warranty rate is almost 0. And for me, that's a good thing, and for the customer, it's a great thing, because then you're not like having to worry about your limbs breaking. You're not having to worry about, well, Is my limb 2 years old? Is it covered by warranty? Where's my receipt? You don't want that. You want this. You want the limbs to be bulletproof. And Fivix limbs are pretty much bulletproof, and they sound like I'm doing a sales job on Fivix, and they're cheaper. They're just cheaper. They're good limbs. They might not be as pretty as your win-and-win limbs. Look, I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're a bad-looking limb, but they are amazing, amazing limbs. Anyway, I'll leave it there, and we're going to do more training. And that's my so my anchor point has changed from there, to the edge of the nose, and you can see probably on the video I got it wrong a couple of times. That's because I'm not familiar with it. I've been practicing all week. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. I'm Stephen Ham from Archery Supplies. Bye.